They say every family has secrets, but I used to believe ours was different. We weren't perfect, of course. My dad had a short temper, and my mom was the kind of woman who bottled up pain like it was wine, getting stronger with age. Still, we were solid. Or so I thought. My name is Lena Whitfield, and up until 3 months ago, I would have sworn on everything I love that my family was built on trust. I work as a neonatal nurse. And if you know anything about that world, you know it leaves little room for anything fake. Every day I'm surrounded by raw emotion. Life and death often separated by a thread. That kind of reality sharpens your senses. So maybe that's why I felt it the shift before I saw it. It started subtly. A missed phone call here, an unexplained late night there. My husband Daniel, who used to text me, "Good night. Love every time I worked the night shift," stopped bothering. He said he was tired or distracted. But after a while, his excuses started to echo with something else distance. We've been married for 7 years, met at college, survived long distance, built a life from almost nothing. We had our first child, Eli, after 2 years of trying. And when I tell you that Daniel was a devoted father, I mean it. The kind who memorized lullabies and cried the first time. Eli called him Daddy. So when I felt that cold shift in him, I didn't want to believe what my instincts whispered. At first, I questioned myself. Maybe I was the one changing. Maybe work was draining me, making me paranoid. But things kept stacking up, like how he changed his phone password, or how he suddenly started going to the gym at 5 a.m., even though he hated morning workouts. I remember the night it all came crashing down. It was a Thursday. I was off work, making pancakes in the kitchen while Eli colored dinosaurs at the table. Daniel's phone buzzed 3 times in a row. Normally I wouldn't have glanced, but he had left it face up, and I couldn't ignore the name that popped up. Maddie. My heart didn't stop. It raced. Maddie wasn't a colleague, or a cousin, or some family friend. She was an ex. The one ex I never wanted to compete with again. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking, the spatula still dripping batter onto the stove. Eli's crayon rolled off the table, breaking the moment like glass on tile. I told myself I'd ask calmly, that I'd wait for the right moment. But in reality, I already knew that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I didn't confront him. I couldn't. Not while Eli was still awake. Not while the illusion of normalcy clung to the air, like perfume you can't quite wash off. So I smiled. I tucked Eli into bed, read Goodnight Moon with a voice that didn't crack once, and kissed his forehead like my world wasn't about to fracture. I waited until Daniel got out of the shower. He came into the bedroom, towel around his waist, humming the same tune he always did when he was trying too hard to appear relaxed. I studied him, every line of his body language, every false note in his smile. "Hey," I said casually, like it wasn't the hardest thing I'd ever had to sound out. He nodded. "Hey, babe. You okay?" That was the first punch, not from his words, but from the way he avoided my eyes. Daniel always looked me in the eyes. "I saw your phone earlier," I continued, my voice tight but measured. 3 messages from someone named Maddie. The silence that followed could have cracked concrete. His jaw tightened, and he looked down at the carpet like it might offer a script. "It's nothing," he muttered. "Just an old friend." She reached out. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. "She has a flower next to her name, Daniel." He blinked. "So? You don't put emojis next to just a friend." My voice rose, despite every nerve in my body begging me to stay calm. "You changed your password. You stopped texting. You've been distant for weeks. And now Maddie just reappears?" He sighed, and that sigh, long, rehearsed, tired, made something inside me snap. "You're having an affair," I whispered. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He just sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his face like I was the one causing him pain. "It just happened," he said. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was a mistake." Mistake. That word burned through my chest like fire. Mistakes don't last for weeks. Mistakes don't text you 3 times during family dinner. He stood up, trying to reach for me, and I stepped back. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't touch me." There's a moment in every betrayal where reality sets in, not just the act, but the layers, the lies, the rehearsals, the smiles shared while your back was already bleeding. I slept in Eli's room that night, curled beside his tiny body like his innocence could shield me. I cried so silently I scared myself. No sobs, no gasps, just tears endless and cold. The next morning, Daniel was gone. He left a note on the kitchen counter. "We need space. I'm going to stay with a friend for a while. Please don't tell Eli yet." A friend, right. The house was so quiet after he left. Not peaceful, just hollow, like the walls were holding their breath, waiting for something to break. I took a day off work, called in sick, though I wasn't sure if heartbreak counted as a legitimate illness. Maybe it should. The symptoms are all there. Nausea, dizziness, loss of appetite, insomnia. The ache wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Every part of me throbbed with betrayal. Eli kept asking where Daddy was. I told him, Daddy's on a little trip. And he nodded, too young to question the lie. Too innocent to realize how shattered his mother was. I spent most of that day walking from room to room, staring at the life we had built. Every photo on the wall felt like a slap. Our wedding picture, Eli's first steps, that trip to Big Sur, where Daniel held me like I was the only woman in the world. It all felt like fiction now. A beautifully shot movie with an ending no one expected. But the worst part wasn't the infidelity. It was the realization that he had been slowly leaving me long before Maddie ever texted him. His heart had been packing bags while mine was still decorating the guest room. That kind of abandonment, quiet, calculated, was so much crueler than any dramatic confession. That evening I called my sister. Mara has always been my rock, the kind of woman who can smell a lie from a mile away and burn it down before it spreads. She answered on the second ring. Hey, you okay? I couldn't even speak. Just silence and then a sob. Lena, what happened? He's gone, I choked out. He cheated. With Maddie. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. That piece of... I don't know what to do, I said, wiping my face with my sleeve. He left this morning. Just packed a bag and vanished. Like we didn't build a whole life together. Come stay with me, she said instantly. Pack up, Eli. Bring what you need. You shouldn't be alone right now. But I didn't want to leave my house. Our house. It felt like surrendering. And more than anything, I wanted to reclaim the space he had contaminated. I need to stay, I said quietly. I need to figure this out. For Eli. For me. Mara didn't argue. She just said, then I'm coming to you. That night, she showed up with wine, ice cream, and a fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. We sat on the couch, scrolling through Daniel's old Instagram posts, looking for signs, clues, red flags we'd missed. You know what pisses me off the most? She said at one point. You gave that man everything, loyalty, love, a son, and he tossed it away for what? Nostalgia? I didn't have an answer, but I felt something stir in me, a flicker. Not anger, not yet, but the spark of something stronger than grief. Resolve. Over the next few days, I operated on autopilot. Wake up, make breakfast, pack Eli's lunch, smile when he smiled, cry when he wasn't looking. I went through the motions of motherhood, with a face that looked intact but inside. I was crumbling. Mara stayed with me for the weekend, but Monday morning she had to leave for work. Call me if you need anything, she said, hugging me tight. And I mean anything. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I needed anymore. My heart, my identity, a time machine? Once she left, the silence returned. It wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. I opened Daniel's closet, half expecting his shirts and suits to still be there, neatly pressed and waiting for someone who didn't deserve them. But no, he had taken everything. Even the cologne I bought him last Christmas. The drawers were empty. The air smelled of absence. That's when I noticed something strange. In the back of the closet, behind a stack of old boxes, was a small blue duffel bag, one I hadn't seen in years. It was dusty, half unzipped. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and sat on the edge of the bed before opening it. Inside were photos, dozens of them, of Daniel and Maddie, smiling, kissing, in restaurants, parks, even what looked like a hotel room. Some were old-dated years before we even got married, but others were recent. Very recent. There were notes, too. Letters. A few printed emails. One of them read, I never stopped loving you. I only married her because I thought it was the right thing at the time. You've always been the one. I dropped the letter like it was on fire. He had been in love with her all along. The betrayal went deeper than I imagined. This wasn't a fling. It wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a double life. A love story he had paused for convenience and resumed when it suited him. The room spun. I clutched the bedpost, breathing hard, trying to stay upright. I thought I had already hit rock bottom, but this was a new depth. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the letter burning a hole in my thoughts. My hands itched to destroy everything, his photos, his clothes, the life we built. But I didn't. Instead, I made a decision. I was done being a victim in his story. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't peace, far from it, but it was purpose. And purpose can be just as powerful. I got Eli ready for school, packed his lunch, kissed him twice on the forehead, and waved goodbye as the bus pulled away. Then I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at Daniel's note again. We need space. Space. As if he hadn't already carved miles between us, even while lying next to me, I opened my laptop. Not to scroll, not to distract myself, but to plan. I started listing everything I needed to do, finances to untangle, documents to gather, a lawyer to call. I wasn't going to let him walk away from this untouched, not after what I'd found in that bag. The duffel sat in the hallway closet now, zipped shut, like a body I didn't know what to do with. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away just yet. I needed it for leverage, for truth, for closure. I wasn't sure which. Later that afternoon, I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring, voice tense. Hey, I found the bag, I said calmly. Silence. Then what bag? I almost laughed. Don't insult me, Daniel. The one with the photos. The letters. The lies you buried next to my wedding dress. More silence. I need to see you, he said eventually. Face to face. We need to talk. Tomorrow, I replied. At the park by Eli's school, noon. Come alone. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself long and hard. I was thinner, paler, but my eyes looked different. Sharper, not broken burning. I picked out my clothes with purpose, not to impress, not to seduce, but to remind him of the woman he underestimated. A crisp blouse, dark jeans, no makeup except for lipstick the color of war. When I walked into that park the next day, the wind was cold, but I didn't feel it. Daniel was already there, hands in his pockets, eyes full of regret that came far too late. You look different, he said. I am, I replied. He started talking. Apologies, explanations, memories. I let him speak for almost 5 minutes straight. And then I said the only thing that mattered. You don't get to hurt me and still get the last word. I handed him a sealed envelope, copies of everything from the bag. This is for your lawyer. Because I'm done pretending we can fix this quietly. He looked stunned, speechless. I turned and walked away. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel weak. I felt free. The days that followed were like shedding a skin I didn't realize I'd outgrown. I wasn't just moving on from Daniel, I was rediscovering the woman I used to be before him. Before the compromises. Before the quiet disappointments. Before I silenced parts of myself just to keep the peace. Eli asked fewer questions about his dad. Children are resilient. Yes, but they also sense things. And while I tried to shield him from the worst of it, I knew he could feel the shift in the air. I started cooking again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Music played in the background. Sometimes I danced while chopping vegetables. Silly, clumsy movements that made Eli giggle from across the kitchen island. That sound, his laugh, became the balm I didn't know I needed. One night, after Eli had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room sipping tea and staring at the envelope I hadn't yet opened. The one from the lawyer. Inside were the initial divorce papers, my name printed neatly next to his, separated now by more than just ink. It didn't feel like failure. It felt like freedom dressed in legalese. The next morning, I signed them. Not out of bitterness, not out of vengeance, but out of a deep understanding that sometimes survival means choosing yourself over the wreckage of what was. I mailed the envelope and felt 20 pounds lighter. Later that afternoon, Mara called. Tell me you signed them. I did. There was a pause, then. Good. Because you deserve so much better, Lena. Her words stayed with me the rest of the day. And that evening, while organizing Eli's bookshelf, I found an old journal I hadn't written in since college. I flipped through the pages, poems, dreams, messy sketches of my future life. I had wanted to write books, travel to Italy, learn how to paint. None of those dreams had Daniel in them. And yet somehow I'd built my entire life around him. That night, I picked up a pen and started a new page. Dear future me, today you stopped surviving and started living. Let's see what happens next. A week after signing the divorce papers, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went out alone. No wedding ring. No excuses, no fear. I didn't go far. Just a little cafe on the corner with chipped wooden, tables and soft jazz playing in the background. The kind of place that always smelled like cinnamon and old books. I ordered a cappuccino, found a window seat, and pulled out my journal. For the first time in ages, I wasn't writing about pain. I was writing about possibility. Halfway through my second page, someone tapped my shoulder. Lena? I turned. It was Harper. We went to college together, lost touch after graduation. She looked exactly the same: wild curls, curious eyes, that effortless energy that once made her the center of every room. We talked for hours, laughed, cried. She told me about her failed engagement. I told her about Daniel, but not the broken version, the full story, and she didn't flinch. Before we left, she said, "You're glowing, you know." I blinked. "Am I?" "Yeah," she smiled, like someone who just remembered how to love herself. That night, I looked in the mirror again. The tired eyes were still there, but they sparkled now. Not with sadness, but with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. In the days that followed, I started doing little things just for me. I signed up for a painting class, bought myself fresh flowers, started reading again real books, not just articles about parenting or marriage. Eli noticed. "You're smiling more," he said one evening while brushing his teeth. I kissed his forehead. "That's because I'm feeling better." "Good," he said, mouthful of toothpaste. "I like when you smile." So did I. But not everything was light. One afternoon, I ran into Maddie. I hadn't planned it. I was walking out of the grocery store, and there she was, hair perfectly curled, expensive sunglasses, pretending not to notice me. But she did. She walked right up, as if we were old friends meeting for coffee. "Lena," she said, voice full of feigned concern. "How are you?" I smiled. Not the kind she expected. "I'm healing," I said. "How about you?" She blinked, caught off guard. Before she could reply, I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. I didn't need revenge, just closure. It had been nearly 2 months since Daniel left, and my home no longer felt like a museum of our failed marriage. I had rearranged the living room, painted the bedroom a soft sage green, and donated the wine glasses we'd received as wedding gifts. There was no anger behind those actions, just release. I even took down the framed wedding photo from the hallway. Not in a moment of rage or despair, but in a moment of peace. I wrapped it in a towel, placed it gently in a box, and tucked it away in the attic. It didn't need to hang on the wall anymore. It didn't need to hang on me either. That afternoon, Eli brought home a school assignment, draw your family. He had drawn me, himself, and our cat, Pickles, no Daniel. I hesitated. "Where's Daddy?" He looked up with simple innocence. "He's not in this house anymore." It stung, but only for a moment. Because it was also true. Later that night, while Eli was asleep, I lit a candle and opened my journal again. I found myself writing letters I never intended to send. Letters to the woman I used to be. "Dear Lena, you stayed too long. You tried too hard. But you loved with your whole heart, and that matters." I cried while writing. Not because I missed Daniel, but because I finally felt the depth of everything I had carried alone. The resentment, the guilt, the quiet sacrifices that no one ever thanked me for. And yet, despite it all, I wasn't angry. I was grateful. Grateful that I had loved. Grateful that I had learned. Grateful that I had finally let go. The next morning, I booked a weekend cabin for just Eli and me. 2 nights in the woods, no screens. Just us and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot. When we arrived, Eli ran through the trees, laughing like he was lighter too. Maybe he was. That night, we roasted marshmallows and told stories by lantern light. He asked if I was happy now. I looked at him, this beautiful boy who had seen more than he should have. And I said, "I'm not just happy. Eli, I'm free." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Monday mornings used to mean chaos, forgotten lunches, mismatched socks, Daniel's irritation at my disorganization. But this Monday felt different. Eli and I danced in the kitchen, to a silly 90s pop song while waiting for the toaster to pop. He wore his shirt backward and didn't care. I wore no makeup and didn't care either. After I dropped him off at school, I sat in the car for a moment, staring out the windshield. The sky was overcast, but it felt like sunshine was hiding just behind the clouds. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. At work, Mara stopped by my desk with a coffee. "You're glowing again," she teased. I laughed. "It's the marshmallows and fresh air." But we both knew it wasn't. That night, I got an email from a small publishing blog. I had submitted a personal essay to something raw and honest about divorce, motherhood, and rediscovery. They wanted to publish it. I read the email 3 times before it sank in. I whispered to myself, maybe I still have a voice. The next day, I signed up for a writing group at the local library. It met every Thursday evening, and just walking into that room with my notepad felt like standing at the edge of something beautiful. There were other women there, some divorced, some widowed, some never married at all. All of us had stories. All of us had wounds. And all of us were brave enough to bleed ink onto a page. One of the women, Teresa, was in her 60s with fire-red hair and a laugh that filled the room. After hearing a part of my story, she leaned over and said, "Honey, you're not broken. You're blooming." I held on to that. At home, I started making small vision boards again. Not about career or status, but about feelings. Peace, joy, stillness, soft, mornings and safe evenings. Laughter with Eli. Quiet pride in myself. Daniel texted once. Just a simple, "Hope you and Eli are well." I stared at the screen for a moment, then put the phone down. No anger, no longing. Just nothing. And that nothing felt like everything. I never thought healing would feel so quiet. Not dramatic. Not like the movies. No grand epiphanies. No running through the rain in slow motion. Just tiny moments stitched together with intention and grace. Eli and I began creating our own traditions. Every Friday night, we built blanket forts and watched old movies. He loved Home Alone, even in July. We made popcorn, laughed at the same scenes, and fell asleep under fairy lights strung across the ceiling. That became our normal, and I treasured it. One Saturday afternoon, I ran into an old friend from high school at the farmer's market. Her name was Jo, and she had that same spark she always had. We sat down for coffee, and after catching up, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter, Lena, happier." I smiled, because I am. She paused. "I remember you back then, so full of ideas, so creative. You used to talk about writing a book. Do you still think about that?" I hadn't thought about it, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, after Eli went to bed, I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor. I typed the words, Chapter 1. It was terrifying, but it also felt like coming home. Each day I wrote just a little more, not for anyone else, not for approval, just for me. And as the pages filled, so did I. One morning, Eli came into the room holding a drawing he'd made. It was me, sitting at a desk with a pen in hand and a crown on my head. I laughed. "What's this?" "You're a queen now," he said simply. "Because you're brave." I hugged him so tightly he squealed. In that moment, I realized something powerful. I didn't need to be someone's wife to feel whole. I didn't need to be someone's daughter or employee or even someone's ex-wife. I just needed to be mine, and I finally was. One evening in late September, as summer gave way to the first crisp hints of autumn, I stood on the back porch watching Eli chase fireflies in the yard. The golden hour light wrapped around him like magic, and I found myself holding my breath not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood what peace felt like. A few months ago, that same yard had felt haunted by memories, by arguments, by the ghost of who I used to be. But now it was just a place where my son laughed, and where I could hear myself think. I received another email from the editor of the blog that had published my first essay. This time she offered me a monthly column. She said my words had struck a chord with their readers, especially other women, trying to find themselves after loss. For a moment, I sat frozen in front of the screen. Me, a regular writer? A voice people wanted to hear? It felt surreal, but it also felt deserved. Later that week, at my writing group, I shared a piece I had written about motherhood, raw and imperfect and full of love. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Teresa, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "Lena, that was poetry." I wept on the drive home, not out of sadness, but out of release. I had spent so long trying to be small, to fit someone else's version of me, to be easy and agreeable and manageable. But now I was loud with purpose, soft with forgiveness, and radiant with truth. One night after putting Eli to bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked up at the stars. No music, no phone, just me. And I whispered aloud, not to Daniel, not to anyone else, but to myself. "You made it." By October, the leaves had turned amber and crimson, blanketing our street like a painting in motion. Eli collected the prettiest ones and pressed them into a scrapbook we called Our New Life. Each page held small moments, us eating pancakes in pajamas, reading together under the covers, dancing in the kitchen to songs neither of us knew the lyrics to. There was no space for Daniel in those pages, not out of spite, but because he no longer fit. I didn't erase him from Eli's life. He still visited, but the emotional hold he once had on me, gone. I no longer anticipated his texts or rehearsed conversations in my head. I no longer hoped he'd see what he lost, because I finally saw what I had gained. One afternoon, I met Jo again at the cafe downtown. She brought a friend, Nadia, an illustrator. They were working on a children's book. together and asked if I'd ever consider writing something for young readers. The idea thrilled me and terrified me in equal parts, but I said yes. We sat for hours, brainstorming stories about brave little girls who plant gardens in broken places and make stars out of paper. It felt like writing a letter to my younger self, the one who used to draw princesses with swords. That night, Eli asked, "Mom, are you ever going to fall in love again?" The question caught me off guard. I smiled and answered honestly, "Maybe someday. But right now, I'm just learning how to love my life." He seemed satisfied with that. As I tucked him in, he said, "I'm glad you're happy now." I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Me too, baby. Me too." Later, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional rustle of wind outside. I thought about how far I'd come, not in distance, but in healing. I had been broken. But I had also been brave, and somewhere in between, I had found myself again. And that was everything. The invitation came in a soft blue envelope, slipped into my mailbox between bills and coupons. It was from Nadia and Joe. They were hosting a small art and storytelling event at the local bookstore and wanted me to read from my latest children's story. I stared at the invitation for a long time. Me, standing in front of strangers, reading words I wrote. A year ago, I would have politely declined, made excuses and hidden under a blanket of self-doubt. But that was the old me. So I said yes. The night of the event, I wore a dark green sweater that brought out the gold in my eyes. Eli helped pick it out. He said I looked like a forest queen. The bookstore smelled like old pages and fresh coffee. Dozens of folding chairs filled the space. And to my surprise, most of them were occupied. I sat between Joe and Nadia, hands shaking slightly, trying not to let fear undo all the threads I had sewn into myself over the past months. When it was my turn, I walked to the front, took a breath, and read. My voice trembled at first, but then it found rhythm like muscle memory returning from a forgotten dream. I looked up halfway through and saw Eli in the front row, grinning ear to ear. When I finished, the room was quiet. And then applause. Not thunderous or dramatic, just kind, genuine, enough. Afterward, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "I've been through a divorce," she said, voice soft. "Your story gave me hope I didn't know I needed." That night I drove home in silence. Windows cracked. October air curling around my fingers. I didn't cry. I didn't smile too wide. I just felt settled, real, whole. As I parked, I noticed something. I hadn't thought about Daniel in days. He no longer occupied space in my mind. No more what-ifs. No more rewinding. Just room. Room for stories. Room for motherhood. Room for myself. I didn't realize how heavy my grief had been until it was gone. It wasn't a sudden release. It was gradual, like fog lifting one thin layer at a time. One morning, I woke up and didn't feel the ache in my chest. I noticed birdsong before I noticed silence, and I smiled to myself, because that had once felt impossible. My mornings began with tea instead of anxiety. My nights ended with journaling, not tears. The pages of my new book were nearly finished. A story about a little girl who built a boat from broken wood, set sail alone, and found a new island made of kindness. Eli helped name the characters. He insisted the main one be called Hope. I didn't correct him. At school, Eli had started writing short stories of his own. His teacher emailed to say he was a natural storyteller, with emotional depth beyond his years. I cried reading that, not from sadness, but pride. Because I knew where that depth came from survival, from resilience, from watching me rebuild my life one brick at a time. One evening, as I folded laundry, Eli asked, "Do you think Dad ever misses us?" I paused. "I think he misses what we were. But we're not that anymore," I said carefully. "And that's okay." He nodded slowly. "I miss him sometimes." "That's okay too," I said. "Missing someone doesn't mean you want them back." He smiled at me. "I'm glad we have us." "Me too, baby, me too." That night, I stood by the window and watched the wind move through the trees. The same trees that once stood witness to so much pain now held no power over me. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. And in that stillness, with the house quiet and my heart calm, I whispered something I had waited so long to believe. I am enough. I always have been. Spring arrived earlier than usual that year, tiptoeing into our lives with soft winds and sun-dappled mornings. The cherry blossoms outside our kitchen window bloomed in hushed defiance of winter's final breath, and everything around me hummed with renewal. For the first time in a long time, I didn't just notice the change in seasons. I felt it in my bones, in my breath, in the quiet steadiness of my own heart. On a Saturday morning, Eli and I spent hours in the backyard, turning the soil with our bare hands. We planted sunflowers and lavender, mixing seeds with laughter and muddy fingertips. Eli told me he wanted to grow a jungle of happiness, and I smiled, knowing that even if the flowers didn't bloom, joy already had. As he pushed the last handful of soil into place, he looked up and said, "This one's for us, Mom, for the version of us that didn't give up." I didn't cry, not because I wasn't moved, but because I had finally learned to hold emotion without drowning in it. Later that afternoon, we walked to the local market, a soft breeze following us like a familiar melody. Eli darted from booth to booth, marveling at handmade soaps and colorful kites, while I browsed old books and candles with lavender-scented wax. That's when I saw him. Not Daniel, someone new. He was standing near a booth with hand-painted mugs, gently examining each one like he was looking for something specific, but not in a hurry to find it. He had a calm presence, the kind of energy that doesn't ask to be noticed, but somehow lingers like warmth. When our eyes met, it wasn't cinematic or electric. There was no orchestral swell in my chest. There was just peace, recognition, a silent, "I've been through things too." He smiled. I returned it softly, sincerely. We didn't speak. I didn't ask for his name, and he didn't ask for mine. But as I walked away, a small thought followed me. Maybe not today, but someday, that night, after Eli had gone to bed. I sat in the living room with my journal open and a pen resting between my fingers. I looked around at the home we had filled with love, resilience, and second chances. The walls once echoed with grief. Now they held warmth. The floor once trembled beneath my uncertainty. Now it felt solid beneath every step. And the woman sitting on the couch? She wasn't the same as the one who had packed boxes in tears a year ago. She had rebuilt herself. She had become herself. I wrote, "My name is Lena Carter. I am not broken. I am not what I lost. I am what I chose to heal. I am what I dared to hope for." I closed the journal and whispered into the silence, "And I am just getting started." The window was cracked open. A warm wind curled through the curtains. And for the first time, I didn't feel like something was ending. I felt like something beautiful had just begun.